Welcome to the Furloko Podcast.
Where crazy fluff butts talk about stuff and things. Yeah.
And maybe some things you might wish you'd never heard of.
With your hosts,
DJ for 3.
Where Fox 18. So, how's everyone doing today? You doing okay, DJ?
Rocky, but yes, I'm doing good.
Awesome. What about you, Omni? You doing good? Give us a thumbs up if you are. Awesome. So, this week's topic, the spookiness of the paranormal.
Yeah. And I'll start because you already know my story. It's short. Shut it. So
Silly kitty cat. Meow, meow, meow.
cameraman being loud again.
He's being
so-
a cat.
This happened back when I was younger, and I used to have like a guardian. Now I knew it was a guardian because he stayed away from me, but he was there as if he was protecting me. Now, mine had a different form. So, mine was in the form of a all-black wolf with golden eyes. And so, I could see it every other night. And it was with me all of like my elementary years. And then I met a friend and we started talking, and she had a similar guardian that also took the form of a wolf, but hers was all white wolf with blue eyes. And so, like, we had our guardians. And one night, after we talked about it and stuff, there was one night that both of us saw it that night. Our guardians swapped places. I saw her all white with blue eyes wolf, and she saw my all black with golden eyes wolf. And it swapped for one night. And then the very next night, it went back to normal. But then I never saw her again. She moved or
that's
got
weird.
transferred, and so, like, it's as if our guardians wanted to meet one another and then just went back to normal and everything separated. But it was only from my elementary years, because after that, I could still tell that they were there. I just couldn't see them.
That's kind of interesting.
Besides that person, as far as my memory can go, besides that friend, and I guess all of you and you, maybe my mom and dad, nobody knows about that. I've told no one about it. Not even my closest friends at school. Because I thought I'd be weird. I mean, I am. Everyone's weird.
Aren't we all, though? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
What's normal anyway?
Everyone's weird.
Normal's a relative term,
No.
and it's a fictional term.
No. Weird is normal. If you're normal, you're weird. That's how it is. Everyone's weird, but if you're
So-
normal, you're weird.
So weird is normal if you're normally weird?
Weird is normal, and
Weird's a weird
normal's
word.
weird.
Ain't that weird?
Weird.
Anyway.
Alright. Your story.
Oh my goodness, which one though? Which one? I have so many. What would be more interesting to you? Like, because I did paranormal investigations when I was younger and was still in college and things like that. Or do you want to hear more about like personal experiences? What do you think would be more fun to discuss?
Honestly, I think first, mm, go go about your paranormal investigations because I've got interest into that from a few separate
Okay,
games.
okay. Oh, shush, Omni. Yes, it is going to be a rant, probably. I know I'm known to ramble. All right,
Me
so
too.
back when I was in college, a friend of mine and I, we used to like go to this place called Green Bridge. It's an old bridge out in the town of Ozark, Missouri. It's a little ways from where I live, a good little drive, but we used to love going there because we always heard that the bridge was haunted. There were several things that took place in that area, including all the way back to the Civil War. There was also a hospital that used to be there, I think, or something along those lines. I couldn't find out a whole lot of information, but there was an old farm there. A lot of things have happened there. A lot of murders have taken place. Um, Car accidents because it's a one-lane bridge. Tons and tons of car accidents over the years. So when we were first getting into the whole paranormal thing, before we actually started our team, we wanted to get some training in with the people we were bringing on. And we would go out there, as well as an older cemetery that was around that we had permission to be at. And we would go out there, see if we could catch EVPs, see what we could capture on cameras, teach people how to use a camera for night photography and videography, learning how to use low light systems, infrared emitters for, say, like if you're using an infrared camera for night vision, things like that. Well, um, the first EVP we ever caught was in reference to someone that was hung there, and it called the person a wife beater. I won't go into more details than that, but apparently that was one of the EVPs we caught. Um, and that's really kind of what got us interested into the whole paranormal investigation thing. Once we actually got some evidence like that, and that was the very first EVP we caught. We caught several others. It's like, why did you hang me? I was innocent. We caught several there. Um, and every time we would go out, we'd always get an EVP. We never once left there without any type of orbs or EVP or spirit box phenomenon. We always got something. Uh, and
Spirit
this is
box
back before
is good.
dots. Yeah, yeah, we didn't have a dots protector or anything like that because we were a new team. We were still kind of acquiring equipment as we built upon it. And over the next 3 years, we built up a reputation in the Ozarks. And, well, we got invited to investigate uh, the Hammonds Hotel here in town. And that was really interesting because it was our first professional gig that was that we were invited by a corporation to instead of just like an individual or something like that. It was really neat. And this hotel was really, really nice. It's really old. It's been there quite a while. I don't know exactly the age of the hotel. It's been a long time since I looked it up. But we caught a few things there. We caught a partial apparition on camera. You could see the outline of a person walking through the hallway. Um, Nothing there was real aggressive. And what was really neat though is we caught a lot of EVPs that just sounded like people talking in their day to day, like chefs talking to each other or people going about saying, hey, where do I take such and such to? Just things like that. It was really fascinating because it was almost like looking back in time in a way. Like for a moment, listening to that, you felt like you were there back when the place was new. It was kind of neat. So of course that got us more and more intrigued. And then one time we were invited out to a place out in Defiance, Missouri, and I think it was called the Daniel Boone's Farm, something like that, Daniel Boone Farm, and um, it was where his family was supposed to grow up and all that, and or at least owned for a while. So we were out there. We got invited. We met the caretaker. The caretaker showed us around the property and then let us do our thing, set up our cameras, and split off into our groups. Um, this is the first thing that got a little strange for me, and kind of one of the reasons I got out of paranormal, doing the paranormal work, everything like that, is because we were there for about an hour at this point, and it was getting pretty late. We were coming up on dead hour at this point. For those of you that don't know what dead hour is, or the witching hour, it's basically where paranormal activity is supposed to be at its peak. And it kind of varies based on your time zone, but a lot of people argue this between 12 and 3 a.m. But it, it does kind of come down to your global position on that. But it usually between 12 and 3 a.m. is when witching hours are the strongest. And so we were coming up on the start of witching hour, and we heard some people arguing, and it was relatively loud. We look over to where the caretaker's home was, and we could see them arguing. They shut their blinds, they were yelling and everything, because I guess they realized that we still had the cameras on. And then it got real awkwardly silent. A moment later, we heard someone racking a shotgun. And at that point, we just started packing up our equipment early, got in the car, and as we were getting ready to leave, we saw the caretaker turn out the lights in their home, wander around a bit, and then come outside. But he never once came to check on us before we left. He never checked on us again throughout the rest of the night before we left. The only thing we heard from him again was them yelling at each other and the sound of that shotgun being racked. And when we come back home, we start doing our analytics of all the data that we collected, and we went through every photo, every video, looking for orbs, apparitions, things like that. Found a couple. Nothing too bad. We found like an apparition of someone in one of the fields with the corn, like they were just carrying a basket, like they were gathering corn for the year. And then the other one we caught was just a bunch of orbs. We caught a few EVPs, and it was nothing really bad. It was just kind of mundane. But there was one that said "Beware," and another one that did say "This place isn't safe" or something along those lines. Um, After that, we finished all of our analysis, and we sent them the recordings, the EVPs. We sent them everything in an email because they weren't answering our calls or anything like that. After we emailed them, they responded with an email, and then a week later they had mailed us a check. And then we'd even offered to go back out there and discuss everything with them in person, or if they wanted us to do a follow-up, we would. Never heard from them again. It was really strange that night. It was the first time we never felt safe in a place. And the only other time we didn't feel safe in a place was a place down in Joplin. We were investigating a person's home because they were having things fall, they were having things move. Um, and we only caught a little bit of that on camera, and I wish I still had the footage to this day, but unfortunately, the friend of mine that owned the company, he has all that footage because it was in the company's name. And it was Southwest Springfield Paranormal. I don't know if he still has any of it. I would love to share it with you one day if I can get some of it. Maybe if I do, that's something we can venture down again later. But because it is pretty fascinating. This home, whenever you would go into this place, and it was a young married couple, they were freshly married. They were kept having all these weird events happen in the home. It was starting to scare them. It was making them uncomfortable. They wanted us to come out and see what we thought of the place. So we did. We did our typical thing. We set up infrared cameras. We set up a couple of places where the activity was the worst, like up in the attic, and things were known to move. So we tried to position everything on things that they know was messed with more regularly. One of them was a picture on the wall. It would always fall or get moved throughout the night. Also, another thing they had was a little alarm clock upstairs that was just up there for them to keep time. They never set the alarm on it, but it would just sometimes fall off the table it was on. It would just like someone would hit it and knock it off. And they only had one cat, and every time we would do an investigation, the cat would be in the crate. We went out to this place 3 different times because each time we would come out, we'd find something, we'd tell them what was going on that we knew about or what we would see, then about a week or two later, they want us to come back out because the place was getting worse. Well, to give you a little background, my friend that ran the team and his fiance were really bad about provoking things. They would try to anger it. They would try to get a reaction. They always wanted that hard evidence, so they would try to do as much as they could to get it to act or to do something on camera. Well, they got what they wanted. That night, first night we were there, um, that painting didn't just fall off the wall. It went across the room like someone threw it. Um,
Uh-oh.
that alarm clock went flying down the stairs after we'd walked out of the room. Um, one of the cameras was knocked over at a certain point, and that camera never worked again. We actually had to replace it. Thankfully, that camera was one of our older ones. It was just an old digital 8 with night vision, so it wasn't like our high-end DV cams at the time. That dates us a bit. We were using 8mm cameras, like the little 8mm cassettes. That's how far back this was. But um, and we we had brought some holy water with us because one of our friends was Catholic. One of the people on our team was Catholic. Another one was Native American, and they both did blessings on the house. The activity quieted down for a week or two, and then they called us back saying that it was back, but a lot worse. So we go back out there, and that time, the minute you walked into the house, like if you've ever been in a place that's really humid or has like a really thick, heavy moisture in the atmosphere and it's hard to breathe, it felt kind of like that. It's just like everything was tense, everything was unpleasant. Everything was telling you to leave, but we stayed anyway. Um, we got EVP saying get out, and one that sounded like it said death, but it was really growly and hard to understand, so it's still debatable. I'm always a skeptic, but that one was really bizarre. Um, it got so bad, even after we had the house blessed again, that they ended up having to stay in a hotel for a while. And eventually, this couple started fighting more and more and more. And we gave them advice on like priests in the area that might be able to help in case it was demonic, all these different things. Because we weren't getting anything definitive. We just knew that there was activity there, and yeah, some of it could be considered violent. I mean, things were being thrown, things were falling, things were being broken. The couple's wedding picture was knocked off and shattered that night, the second night we were there. And we were all standing outside when it happened talking. We heard glass broke, so we all rushed back in the house. And it was on the floor. So we know none of us did it because we were outside talking to the couple, and the group of four of us were talking with them and what we were going to do. So the fact that these things kept happening was really bizarre. And I know this is a long ramble, but it's hard to go into this without giving you some background. And one thing led to another, and I was getting ready to go to convention with my girlfriend at the time. Yeah, I admit I'm divergent. But so we were getting ready to pack. We were getting ready to load up the car, and it was the night before we were supposed to leave. And my friend comes over and he's like, "Hey, we need to go back down to Joplin." And I'm like, "Well, I can't. We're leaving in the morning." He's like, "Well, what do you mean you can't?" And I've never seen my friend be this aggressive. He was angry. He was hateful. He was yelling at us because we weren't willing to go with him. He's like, "You need to take the company seriously," all that. And I'm like, "Dude, you've known this was planned for the last 2 months, and it's literally the night before. What do you want from me?" I told him basically, "Go home, leave me alone." Well, anyway, he calmed down. He called me back and he apologized after he got home, and he came back by. We talked a little bit more, and he told me what was going on. And he said that one of the lights had fallen off the ceiling of that house. One of the doors slammed open, damaging the wall, and the people were leaving. And we're putting the house up for sale, but they wanted us to do one more investigation before they sold it. And I said, "You guys are welcome to," but I said, "I have things I got to do this weekend." That's the last I ever heard about that place. But I will say this, about 2 months after this happened, my friend and his girlfriend's relationship kept going further and further downhill. And it became to a point where one night she was acting really strange. She was rolling around on the floor like she was on drugs. She was making all kinds of weird sounds, like just and laughing. And
Possible
it was
possession.
that's what I wonder. Can't prove it one way or the other per se. It's just speculation. But that was when I decided I wasn't going to do paranormal investigation anymore. I just quit. I told them, I said, I'm sorry, I'm leaving the team. I can't deal with this. I don't need this in my life. This is way too much for me. And it got so bad. She dropped 100 pounds in less than a year. She got to where she looked
Oh,
anorexic. Her eyes were sunken in. She looked like a meth user. And I hate to use that term, but that's the only way to describe how she looked. And she filed,
mm,
she left him for another man. And then every time he tried to get her to sign the divorce papers after she left, because he found someone else and had a kid now at this point, 2 years later, she still hadn't signed the papers, and they ended up having to go to court. And I'm not going to go into any more detail on that, but it's just been so bad because it just happened so suddenly. These people used to get along really well for the most part. They were funny. They very rarely fought, and then it just seemed like suddenly overnight things changed after that investigation. I don't know what happened. I know they both were provoking it. She was trying to channel whatever was there, and ever since that happened, that's when she started acting really strange. And we don't even know where she's at now. She's just been so crazy and all over the place. She even made death threats to me at one point.
honestly, with all that info and everything, the only way my brain is putting that is either some sort of like attachment or possession or just some sort of transfer of energy. Because if they were perfectly fine and then after that night that you didn't go, things flipped like a switch. Uh, as far as my knowledge can go on paranormal stuff like that, it's got to be one of those. It can't be nothing for it to just perfectly fine, and then after that investigation that you didn't go to, that it just clicked.
It's
Like,
possible.
my brain can't put it any other way. Either some sort of attachment, some sort of possession, some sort of transfer of negative energy. Like, anything can happen. It could be just something else happened during that night that they snapped at each other, and it could be that. But for how my brain's putting it, for all of the info that I heard, it's got to be something negative is either attached or transferred. That's just how my brain's putting it.
And not to be weird, but to add to the creepiness factor, it seems like after that time, that's when my health started to fail. I was going to the hospital a lot more. I kept having more injuries. I had trouble keeping jobs, like even when I was literally busting my tail to do everything I was supposed to do in the time frame that they're asking. It's just like nothing was ever good enough. Um, and it just seemed like I was having a lot of weird luck there for a while. Vehicles kept breaking down. I couldn't keep anything running. I was always having to fix things. Weird things would keep happening around me. It eventually quit, but it was like that for about a year or two after that. Now my health has still continued to get worse with age, but that does kind of come with age. But at the time, I was only in my mid 20s, and I was having back, knee, joint problems that most people don't have until they're in their 40s or later, and they've plagued me ever
Except
since.
me.
Hmm. And I mean, there's exceptions to every rule, but it's just so
Mm-mm.
strange. Like I was having fainting spells a lot more. Um, I developed a blood pressure issue literally the same year that my blood pressure will spike when I change position. And it took them years to figure out this is what was going on. Because by the time I would get to the hospital, everything would be normal again. But after many portable monitors and being able to watch what it does, it'll spike. It won't get real high, but it'll get just high enough that it's on that verge of high blood pressure, hypertension, and then it will just tank, drop suddenly. And when I say tank, it's below 125 over 55 sometimes, and that's way too low. And it just caused me to black out, just bloop, and then I'd be normal again after I wake up. And thankfully, it's been a little bit less severe because we've been able to manage it. But all that started after that week, and I don't know. It's strange, but probably mundane, probably coincidence, but still creepy nonetheless. When you think about it, there's a lot of speculation that can be had there.
It's either just a very unlucky coincidence, or it's because, sorry, like you said, with some of the EVPs being like get out and stuff like that, or leave, and like a growly tone. I mean, just from stuff that I've watched, like, I guess I can just put it out there, Ghost Adventures, because I'd always watch it with my mom because she'd always put it on. Like, with stuff like that, normally that comes along with some sort of bad transfer of energy. Like, even if it's not wanted, which should be the norm, but there's people out there that's just like, take me, I'm open. But, anyways, like, it's either a very, very poor bad coincidence, or also for you is some sort of bad transfer of energy. That it was just...
Yeah.
So.
And so we ended our investigation team right around 2009. And in fall of 2009, that was also the year that I had an act of violence occur on my person. Without going into too much detail, someone violated me. And it happened within just months of that occurring. So another possible coincidence, who knows? A lot of people would say that it was probably a demonic entity there or something along those lines. Again, I am a skeptic, but it does make me wonder at times. Like, did something latch on to us as a group? I don't know. I know one of my other friends, my Native American friend there, shortly after that, he ended up in an exceedingly abusive relationship that lasted about 6 or 7 months and left him homeless and everything afterwards because the person took him for everything. And it was just terrible. It just seemed like the whole group faced a lot of hard luck that following year. And what the thing was, even though I left the group, the rest of them still continued on for a short while until they all decided, you know what, enough's enough. I don't know.
One other question that I have is, I mean, as far as you know of, because obviously someone could have done it by secret or this or that. Throughout the past of you guys working together, have you, like, tried taking any possession from the property? Like any sort of objects or...
As far as I know, no one did. The only
anything
person
that's been interacted with?
The only person I would question is that when the camera was knocked over, we did take all that home, obviously, to try to repair it, try to gather the information from it. I don't know that anyone took any possessions from the home or were given any from the family. I didn't, but there's always that risk when you're working with people. You never know what each person's going to do. As far as I know, no one did, because I thought they all would know better than that. But...
And here's another thing. before each investigation or afterwards, did you guys quote unquote clean your equipment?
Yes. Every time we would clean it. The stuff that we could, we would use a little bit of holy water with. We'd also burn sage. We were very adamant about using sage, and our Native American friend, he would always do his traditional blessing, and we welcomed that very much because it always did seem to bring an air of peace around us, and it was very nice to have that as an option, as well as my Catholic friend at the time, and she would always do a blessing there too. Um, now, there is one thing that does kind of ring a bell now that you bring that up, is when we were there at that house, they had some old books that were just up there, like old science books, old things like that were just up in the attic. And a couple of my friends did look through those, just to see what was in there. There was also an old scrapbook that had a lot of writing in it, but nothing really stood out to us. We didn't really find anything that was real creepy. There was an old Bible up there. Uh, there were a couple of old paintings that were really strange. I wouldn't say they were like really disturbing or anything. They were just strange. And I can't even remember exactly what they were of. They were just of people, but they were in like strange settings, strange situations. But they weren't like anything what I would consider nasty or dark or gruesome. They were just odd paintings of people in like a really dark
Mm-hmm.
area, dark hallway with a light like off to the side that was just kind of a faint glow, just things like that. And I'm like, there's people that like art like that, so it didn't really stand out to me. Um, my
I
area's
mean,
got a lot of art museums and a lot of artistic people here, so I didn't really think anything of it at the time. But I know a lot of people are looking at stuff like that. There was one object that they did interact with a lot, which was that one painting that would fall off the wall regularly. And a friend of mine did handle it and examine it. And there was some writing on the back that we couldn't make out because it was shorthand, like old school shorthand. But none of us knew how to
mm,
really read shorthand at the time. So,
uh, I guess another question. So, was it like was it like sort of in the countryside or was it more urban
actually, it was actually fairly urban. It was
and
pretty close to downtown Joplin, not far from where the EF5 went through a few years later. Actually, I think that house was hit in the Joplin EF5 tornado in 2011 because it went right down range line
and
and or across range line right
well,
through there anyway.
I guess that next question would kind of be faded out, but I was gonna mention or ask like because if it was more rural, then I would ask if there's like if you guys did any research on like I guess uh from other stuff I've heard of like ley lines or streams or water that
There,
would be
there was a
flowing
ley
near
line.
it.
There was a ley line that allegedly went maybe about 3 blocks from there, and there was also a bunch of creeks in that area, some underground spillways and stuff like that too for um, flood retention.
Because and because I know from like TV shows from Ghost Adventures and stuff like that that whenever they do their information on stuff like that, normally like when you're next to a ley line, it'll like give you some more spiritual activity. But if it happens to be an intersection of ley lines, then it's like severe. And also like the whole thing with running creek water and stuff, uh, or just running water that isn't in like a pipe or whatever, then it can carry spiritual energy and stuff like that. It'll
The house was
amplify it.
very old too. It was an old two-story, what looked like an old farmhouse, maybe even like a Victorian era farmhouse because it had the pillars on the porch, everything, the big steps and the big stone steps, and it
Mm,
was really pretty. Beautiful home and very well maintained. I will say that. Um, and like the stairway that went up into the partial attic, it was partially furnished attic and partially unfinished, and the attic was like barely as wide as I am. Like it was real skinny. Like we had to walk single file up the steps. It was real narrow going into the attic. Um, and there was a door at the top and a door at the bottom. It was kind of neat. um, but definitely an older
Is
home.
there any sort
I
of like
can't
history
remember.
books on it?
I couldn't find a whole lot of information. Like we didn't take a whole lot of time after, like we were planning to go back and get like the old deed information because it is public access. You can look up, build blueprints for the houses, deed information, see who owned it in the past, who currently owns it, all that. That is public information. You can file forms and get it. The most we were able to find out is that I think the last work that was done on the house, like either was an addition or a renovation to the house that had any like real construction permit, was I think 1932, and then after that it was just basic repairs. Repairing drywall, repainting, putting a new electrical, just things like that. But I think the last major work was
Mm,
1932, and um, the house had to have been older than that.
uh, yeah, I mean, and because that's the thing is, if that was the last major sort of construction, whether it was a renovation or an add-on or stuff like that, and if it was that old and the
Hmm.
house might be older, then obviously, what did Joplin look like in those years?
Hmm.
Because I bet it's not going to be as urban as it is now.
Oh no,
So,
definitely not. Definitely not.
so like there could be like there could have been like a burial site that's nearby, or like there could have been a whole lot of things that could have been amplifying it, and or
Very
someone
possible.
in the past was messing around and opened a portal or whatever else. Like it could be anything, because I would say with shit flying across the room, that's, to me that screams poltergeist. But if there's a lot of negative energy, then it's demonic. So, like,
Yeah, there's definitely an
like
oppressing
I
feeling
do
every
have a
time you
little
went
bit
in
of an
there.
interest in this because it's like just how people gather the information. Like, I love the spirit bots. I've never
Hmm.
had any one-on-one with spirit bots, but anytime I see it, or there's video games like Phasmophobia and stuff that I've tried it, I love that, and the EMF detector. That's a cool thing
Yeah, see, I
because
like.
you can tell, kind of tell, but you can kind of get a gist of like if they're smart, if they're
True.
responsive,
Hmm.
because it could
That's
just
one
be
thing I like about
flashing
the
because
spirit
they're
box as
just
well.
walking and doing their normal thing, or it could be you set it down somewhere and be like, if you can hear me, make that go to 5, make it go
Hmm.
red. Weep.
Oh, the EMF
It,
detectors.
it
Yeah,
it's cool.
we didn't have an EMF detector
I like
until
it.
our last, I think, like our last 7 months that we were all working together. That's when we got our EMF detector. But it wasn't anything that basic. It was just just the basic needle style EMF detector that just show you the radiation level, like the electromagnetic radiation level. Real basic, nothing fancy. And we got a few peaks on it, and nothing that I would really be like overjoyed about or call definitive. But it was a useful tool. I won't deny that. We didn't get to use it enough to really see how useful it would be in the long term. But yeah, EMF detectors are neat. I think they have their potentials. I wish I could have worked with it more. I have to admit though, now that I'm getting older again, I hate to say it, curiosity does kill the cat sometimes, and I've been finding myself curious and kind of wanting to get back into it, but I'm like, is it really a good idea? I don't know. But the interest has been
Mm,
sparked again, definitely, especially with recent events. So
yeah.
I'm definitely finding myself curious because it's such an odd topic. I want to know more about it. I want to experience more in some ways, hopefully more peaceful things. But just because I am curious about it, I want to know more of what lies beyond. I want to know if maybe there is, life still here on Earth even after death. Like maybe there are ghosts, maybe there are spirits that linger. I do believe in the paranormal to an extent. I do believe in spirituality. I do believe people have spirits. I believe people have a soul, so to speak, and that it does move on after death. But where does it go? I mean, is it different for every person? You know, and I don't want to go down like the whole religious rabbit hole, but I'm just saying speculation from a scientific standpoint is kind of fascinating to me. Makes me wonder.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
mean,
and that'll probably be a topic that I never get into
yeah, same,
like too
same.
far
It's just
because
such a muddy
that'll
topic.
start to cause me to overthink and start having panic attacks and stuff. And
That's fair. That's fair.
because I've had a couple of friends talk about it when, I mean, I'm not gonna say their names and incriminate them, but I guess I am kind of. But like they've done what is it, DMT and stuff like that, and they'll talk about the experiences they've had, and essentially just start sharing everything. And the last time that they did that, I literally left their house and walked home because I was having a panic attack.
Understandable. I don't know much
I mean,
about that,
given
but
that they were just around the corner from my house, but still, it was just like literally his girlfriend at the time texted me on my phone because I had her number just in case I wanted to get a hold of my buddy. And I was just sitting there and we were playing some board games, drinking and stuff. And his girlfriend texted me and was like, they're gonna be like this for the rest of the night. If you wanna leave and go home, go now while you have a chance.
fair enough.
His own girlfriend was like, I know how they can get. Go while you can. I was like, okay,
I've had
I'll
friends like
take
that in
that
school
deal.
too. I know how you feel.
I'll,
Um,
sounds like I'll hit that button. Ding, deal.
but oh goodness.
I mean, good friends and everything. It's just sometimes they'll just, eh. When stuff starts getting a little bit too much, my brain will just be like, you can either stop listening now, or I'm gonna increase your heart rate to where it wants to pump 3 feet out of your chest, and then make you
Yeah.
sick. And I was just like, I'm gonna go. Ugh.
Sorry, I had to sit up. My back was hurting a bit. But it is still a very big curiosity to me because you mentioned some of your personal experiences, and if you want, if we've got time, I'll mention a personal experience I had before that got me wanting to do the whole paranormal thing. Um, when I was younger, um, even before my college days, this was like right out of high school. I hadn't even started college yet. I was getting ready to start that fall. My vehicle was broke down. My father had an old Suzuki Samurai, and for those of you that don't know what a Suzuki Samurai is, it's similar to a Geo Tracker. It's like a very small version of what would look like a Jeep. It's four-wheel drive, little four-cylinder thing, real tiny two-seater most of the time. Some had a back seat. Um, but I was borrowing it, and I was with a friend of mine at the time. Her name was Charity. Won't go into much detail there, but the name is a little important here just because of things that would happen and some of the conversation that took place this night. Um, my other two friends were from high school, as well as college later in life. Um, they were together, and I met another friend from the anime club there that was older than us by about 4 years. He was getting ready to end his college career, but we were just starting ours. We were all at the Japanese Fall Festival here in town, had a great time. The fall festival ended around 9:30. It was still fairly early in the night. We didn't want to go home. We were trying to figure out what else we could do. It was a bit late to catch a movie. Um, and we didn't really feel like a movie anyway. So we got to talking about stuff. We ended up going out to this old abandoned property that belonged to a friend of ours' family. And it was out on the edge of town. And this is where the city ends, start getting some of the farmland again. And there was about 10 acres on this property. There used to be more of it. It was sold off a little bit as time as things were being developed, but the family still held on to that little piece for a little bit. The gate was open, gate was down, and so we went out there just to check it out because it was supposed to be old and spooky. And we get out there, and I drive the samurai down into the field while my two friends walked. The third friend, the oldest one, stayed at the car because he just didn't feel like going on this property. He wanted to smoke, and he just stayed there. He's like, "Yeah, I'll just sit here." We go onto the property, and my two friends go in the house. Charity and I did not want to go in the house, even though we knew technically it belonged to the family. They still didn't know we were there. We still didn't have their permission to be there at that time, even though they probably would have said it was okay. So I was still not comfortable going in the house, you know. And so we sat in the field. We shut off the truck and just sat there. My other two friends went in the house against our judgment, even though it was their family's property. I just didn't want to be that rude. Um, a few minutes go by. It's not quite a full moon, but it was getting close. There was some cloud cover. There was some fog in the field because there was a creek that ran behind there. It was a real low level fog. Probably would only come up to your knees, you know, that kind of low fog. It was really pretty, and I kind of wished I'd had my good camera at the time. This is when I was starting to get into photography, so I had an old Rebel XTI. But the only thing I had on me was my old flip phone, and if you know, back in the day, those flip phone cameras were terrible. But that's all I really had at the time. We were sitting there, and Charity is like, she's like, Kavori, what the fuck is that? And I look over. You'll probably have to bleep that. I'm sorry, but I look over, and there's this thing walking up towards us, and in the lighting, it looked all white, um, but it had like what looked like stripes on it, and I couldn't tell if it was like a tiger or some other animal that might have gotten loose, but it was on its hind legs, and it was kind of slowly coming towards us on its hind legs. And it looked like it had cat-like features on the front, like it looked like it had this square muzzle like a tiger ears, um, but it was kind of hard to see. So we sat there for a minute just dumbfounded at this thing. It's like, well, did something get loose? Was there something going on that we didn't know about? More and more panic started to set in. She's like, please, can we leave? Please, can we leave? And I'm like, Charity, it's okay. And when I said her name specifically, the thing stopped and just looked and looked more menacing, like it just did not like that name. Um, and then she's because at the time I went by Matt or Maddie. She's like, Maddie, we need to go. I don't want to be here. And I'm like, okay, fine. So I start the truck, and of course the truck was straight piped, um, because it was an old beater. It had been repaired multiple times, and my dad he did what was cheap at the time because he was a welder, tried to save money. So as soon as I started it, loud exhaust from that four banger firing up, and just raspy as could be. And as soon as I throw it in reverse, Jurek and them come running out, and it was just so bad. Like my other two friends just come bolting out of the house. They're pale, like as pale as your white fur, for crying out loud. And we get back to the street, and after I started the truck and they come running out, that thing dropped down to all fours and just took off bolting back towards the tree line at the end of the field. And that was the last I ever saw of it. The eyes on it were kind of a bluish color. They were almost this kind of blue, like on my avatars here, from what I could see at that distance. Because it got within less than maybe 500 feet of us before
Oh
it ran
no.
off. And we get back to the road. I'm throwing it back into two-wheel drive. I get out, lock out the hubs again, and we're all talking. Jarek and them are catching their breath. Um, we're all sitting there at their old car because they had an old beater too. And my friend, like, I'm kind of getting lost in my words here. Um, my other friend that stayed at the car is like, "What the hell's going on? You act like you've seen a ghost." And I'm like, "Kinda." And my other two friends that were in the house was like, "Yeah, there was this guy in the house. He pulled a knife on us. We think he's homeless. He looked like someone that was just squatting in the home. It looked like he'd started a fire in the house at one point with like a little barbecue grill and stuff like that." And so, and I'm like, "See, now you know why I didn't want to go in there because we didn't know if there wasn't a squatter because you said it's been a long time since your family's been out here." So, and we had a bit of an argument and a spat. Then we decided we were all going to go to Steak and Shake. We went to Steak and Shake and we talked about what happened that night. And as I brought it up again while we were sitting there eating, my other two friends that were in the house and came running out, they're like, "Oh, we just said that to scare you." And I'm like, "If you were just saying that to scare us, you would not be pale, you would not be out of breath, you wouldn't be running faster than most Olympics run for cry." You get what I'm saying? There's a difference between just running and running out of fear. It looks completely
Something
different.
doesn't seem right.
Yeah, and they were saying they were just trying to get a rise out of us. I'm like, "No, we started the car before you came running out. We were already backing up when you came running out. You saw our headlights come in. That might have spooked you guys too. You were spooked by something, whether it was a homeless person or not. You were definitely spooked. You just don't want to admit to it now because you don't want to sound weak. Because they were both jocks, and you know how they can be."
Yeah.
No offense to anyone. I
The
played
very
sports too, but I was mostly
typical.
a swimmer and played tennis, so I wasn't like your typical jock by any means. I was always the nerdy one out
Yeah,
of the group.
yeah, just how it rolls, ain't it?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
am big, macho man.
But
Nothing
to this
scares
day,
me.
ever since that happened, I will still occasionally see something out of the corner of my eye, like it's just standing there, and it's random. I never know when it's going to happen. It can be months or years before I see it again. But I always feel like something's there, but I've never been bothered by it.
As long as it doesn't actually do anything.
To this day, still don't know what it was. I know it wasn't just me because she's the one that got my attention and made me look at it. So, and it affected us both, whatever it was. So I don't feel as crazy.
Mm-hmm.
It's still kind of one of those moments that makes me feel a little crazy because it's so absurd, but yet the fact that she drew my attention to it and was like, "Hey, do you see this thing?" I'm like, "Yes, yes, I do." Makes me kind of question things even more.
Mm-hmm.
But it still could have been something that got loose. I mean, that does happen. And but I never saw anything in the news about it around that time.
Yeah, especially for it being the form that it was that you were explaining. Like that's like it's a form, obviously, but like I don't know, that's not normal. I don't think that would just be some animal on the loose. The fact,
Yeah, I don't
and
either.
plus, the fact that whether it was like an actual feline or not, there's no feline that actively walks like a few hundreds of feet on its hind legs just by itself.
Right. And see, at first we thought it might have been a bear, but because it had the white fur and the striping kind of like pattern on it was what really got us confused as to what was going on. That was just really strange to us.
Like, like it could have been some sort of feline, but for it to walk a few hundred feet on just its hind legs,
Hmm.
that's not normal.
No,
It
it's
had to have
not.
been
It was very
something
strange.
paranormal.
Yeah, that or something was very wrong with it, one of the two. Whatever it was.
Yeah.
But I don't know how much time we've used so far. Are we? Okay. Okay. Yeah. I mean, if people really like this topic, we can always discuss it more in the future. I don't know how people are interested in this. I know some people are, some aren't. But if some of the people that watch this do end up liking the topic, we can always revisit it. I'm okay with that and go deeper down the rabbit hole if people want. What do you think?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like I said, as long as it doesn't get like too philosophical and stuff like that, of the whole thing with spirits and everything, as long as it doesn't get too deep or too philosophical, I'm down. Let's go. Let's make another one. Another one.
Yeah. I'm down too. I mean, we can even branch off and go into other strange phenomenon. Um, talk about things like possibly UFO sightings, other bizarre things, like the one that I just mentioned. Kind of feels a bit Skinwalker-like. I don't know. I don't know what you think on that, but that's kind of what it made me think.
Yeah,
Having a Native American friend,
heard
he
about
even thought similar.
that stuff. uh, Heard about different stories and stuff like that. Mostly from Ghost Adventures, but like there's a few things here and there. But yeah, I think say congrats to us guys in the future. Say congrats to us. We managed to stay on topic.
I know, right? And I told you I'd probably be on a rant for a while.
Well, yeah, but that's what we discussed earlier. It was gonna be a short story, and then you get the podcast. Because you have more experience than me.
I mean, that's fair, but still, I like to hear what you have to say.
Well, I mean, I guess I did incur a bit in trying to get more additional information with additional questions.
True. Woo. Omni's over there saying things again, silly kitty cat. Yes, that was a long rant. I don't deny that. I ramble.
Yeah, well, the quote-unquote perks of ADHD and
no.
having Asperger's,
My brain
or
go burr.
as all the doctors want to call it, level 1.
Yeah, I go brain go.
You
Sorry,
should
brain go
have.
burr. See, I even stuttered there. See,
I know
haven't
you're
done that in a long
making a
time.
joke, but that's rude.
Hey, are we paying this cameraman to talk to us? I'm kidding. We love you,
Sure.
Omni. You're a good kitty. Yeah. Bleh.
Oh. And I forgot to say this last time because I always say it. I have a fucking coffee mug that has my phrase on it.
Language! I made that mistake earlier, but that's okay. We'll take care of it.
We cussed a few times throughout this one and the last one.
I know, we're... And honestly, no, we definitely are not. Like, I didn't want it to be to begin with. But I still want to be at least somewhat polite and somewhat friendly. If I get rid of my filter, I will make sailors blush with shame. I'm just gonna say that now.
But anyways, before we go on a sailor's tangent. Or sailor's ton.
Omni's giving me
Maybe
bad
for in the
ideas.
future.
Anyway.
Uh, but so that concludes
Bad kitties,
this
bad.
episode. And don't worry, be furry.
Yeah. Stay furry, my friends. Stay positive, and stay safe. Like we know the world's been crazy lately. Just do the best you can. That's all any of us do. And until the next one, bye bye.
Bye.